What is going on, everyone? It has been a while since I've done any kind of videos for the channel, and I wanted to come back with what I felt would be a very interesting video, and possibly a very well-received video. With Aether Revolt having dropped recently, I was able to update the deck that I had built for my fiance, which is Depala, Pilot Exemplar, Dwarf, Tribal. Now, this deck is a Dwarf and vehicle-centered deck meant for casual play, although it has done extremely well going up against some of the more competitive decks in the meta. We were all very surprised about this, because it didn't seem to fall short of the issue that most Boros decks do, and that is they run out of resources and they just can't keep fighting. Depala actually does quite well at keeping your hand full and always having answers. Now, there are still ways you can modify this. There's a few different new cards like Daredevil Dragster that I haven't put in the deck. I'm debating putting it in, I just don't know what to add in, what to cut for it yet. So they can still be improved, and if you're not wanting to focus on Dwarf Tribal, but when you're wanting to go pure vehicles, a way you can go with this would be to add the humans that are also very good at crewing vehicles. I do not have them in this deck, however. You can build the deck for very, very cheap if you want to cut a few things and replace them with a few others. It can be built on a very tight budget. So that's a beautiful thing about Depala. She is a fun deck, she is a casual deck, she is a consistent deck, and she is a very effective deck as far as Boros and aggro in Commander are concerned. And that being said, she might also be a very fun tiny leader. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the deck. What does Depala do? Well, she is a 3/3 for 1, a red and a white, who is a Dwarf Lord. So your other dwarves get +1/+1, and each vehicle you control also gets +1/+1 as long as it's a creature. So she's lording the two different types that we're focused on in this particular deck. But her real strength comes from the next ability. Whenever she becomes tapped, you may pay X. If you do, reveal the top X cards of your library, and put all dwarf and vehicle cards from among them into your hand, and the rest go to the bottom of your library in a random order. Alright, so basically she is a much stronger version of Munda, but for dwarves and vehicles. This effect can be amazing when paired with cards like Dwarven Recruiter, or if we have a Sensei's Divining Top and we know what the top few cards of our library are. She's just an extremely strong commander for the color combination and for the tribal synergy. We never expected dwarves to get a true commander that would synergize well with the dwarves themselves, and Depala does definitely deliver on that. And again, a 3/3 for 3 is also pretty decent stats. Easily one of my favorite commanders to come out recently. One of the most fun to come out in Kaladesh block. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and get to the 99. Starting with the lands, we are running Evolving Wilds. This can just help us mana fix and grab whichever land we need. Pretty basic. Arid Mesa, strict upgrade. It's going to go find one of our dual lands most of the time, but it can also grab a basic if we happen to need a basic for whatever purpose. Maybe we're out of non-basic lands, maybe our opponent has Blood Moon in play, we need a white source, or they're playing Blood Moon, we had to respond to it and use this rather. Obviously, with Blood Moon in play, we couldn't sacrifice it, but it can just get us the white source we need when we need it. Maybe they're casting Ruination and we need to quickly get a white source. You never know. Plateau speaks for itself, as does Sacred Foundry. Rugged Prairie, it's another one of those cards that just kind of speaks for itself. If you're in dual colors, you probably want your filter land. Buddy Land in the form of Clifftop Retreat. I feel like the lands don't really need much explanation, so I'm going to kind of breeze through them. Pain Land. We have our Bounce Land, or our Karoo, as some people like to call it. Scryland, I actually do love the Temple of Triumph in this deck. Again, we're wanting to do some top deck control and manipulation to make sure we get a good creature or vehicle off of Depala's effect. And Boros has a very hard time manipulating cards. So the Scryland is definitely a must include in any Boros deck. Inspiring Vantage. This is mostly in here to ensure that we can get Depala on turn 3. If this is the first, second, or third land we have, it's great. Otherwise, it comes into play tapped, so it's basically a guild gate. But after turn 3, we generally don't care because we have enough mana to cast what we want to for the most part. Small land destruction package between Wasteland, Strip Mine, and Tectonic Edge. There's a lot of problem lands in the format, like Gaia's Cradle and Sarah's Sanctum and Cabal Coffers, so having ways to get rid of them is absolutely key, and these all help us do so. Also, Strip Mine is really funny against an opponent's turn 1 basic to make them Rage Scoop. Cavern of Souls, which if the foils in the set weren't so horrible, you could see that this was foil, but Cavern of Souls just makes our dwarves uncounterable, so it's strong against blue decks. Command Tower is Command Tower. We're playing a multicolored deck. Reflecting Pool, one of the cards I actually feel like I don't see enough of in dual and tricolor decks in Commander. I see it a lot more in 3, 4, and 5 colors than I do 2 colors, but it's still a solid choice for a dual color deck, especially if you want untapped sources. Glimmer Void is perfect for this list. We almost always have an artifact in play, and I've actually never had a situation, nor is my fiance, where this card had to be sacrificed. So it's just another automatic untapped mana by the color. Inventor's Fair, there's a lot of artifacts in this deck, so having a way to tutor for the one we need when we need it is definitely a quality effect to have. Ancient Den, Great Furnace, and Darksteel Citadel. Again, there's an artifact theme. These work well with Glimmer Void. I've debated on putting a Mox Opal in here as well to have another effect, and there is also a Dispatch in the deck. So the affinity count definitely helps, or the metalcraft count, I guess I should say. And there's no reason not to run them. There's a bit of artifact synergy, so we might as well have them in the deck. And then we're running 7 planes. As well as 7 mountains. Alright, so into the 99 that are not lands, into the non-land cards. Number 1 is Sensei's Divining Top. Again, top deck manipulation is important for Depala, and I had to choose between this and Scroll Rack. And top just overall seems stronger. It can dodge removal, it can help us out whenever we just need other cards besides creatures to put on top of our library, if we need to land really badly, or a shuffle effect in the form of Wheel of Fortune, whatever the case may be, this can help us find it. Top is definitely a staple in Commander for a lot of reasons. Yes, it can be annoying when your opponent just says, okay, in response top, every 5 minutes. But that's all about, you know, learning how to use the card properly. For players on a budget, an extreme budget, because I understand that some folks can't afford to spend $15 on the top, Crystal Ball is a great budget alternative. Soul Ring, we are playing Commander. It is not dual Commander, so we have Soul Ring. What more is there to say? Boros Signet, big fan of the Signets. They help us filter and they help us ramp. Urza's Incubator. The vast majority of dwarves in this deck do not cost more than 3. There's 2 that cost 4, and that is it beyond the cost of 3 mana. So this will help us cast almost every single thing in our deck for 1 mana, and a couple creatures for 2, as well as help Depala's command attacks drop down. So it just helps us unload our hand much faster. Solemn Simulacrum, one of 3 non-dwarf creatures in the deck, although the other 2 can become dwarves. We're in Boros, we need the ramp and we need the draw, so we suck it up and we play the Sad Robot. Gilded Lotus, just a strong ramp card. There's very few mono and dual color decks that I don't jam Gilded Lotus into, just because it helps ramp so significantly. Into the creatures, okay, this is what everyone wants to see, right? Number 1 is Toolcraft Exemplar. Most times it's a 2-1 first strike for 1. Or a 3-2 first strike for 1. Sorry. Hard to argue with that. It can crew most things at the beginning of combat. So we can tap it, crew a vehicle we need, or we can just swing in with it. And with Depala in play, it's going to be a 4-3 for 1 mana with first strike. Definitely not bad to swing with. Saram, Senior Edificer, probably the best new dwarf to come out of Aether Revolt for us. This card is amazing. We have, I think, 14 vehicles in the deck, as well as 2 equipment. So that's 16 different things this card can draw off of. And it's a 2-2 for 2. That'll be a 3-3 for 2 with Depala in play. So, certainly a nice card to have. Nice value card. Gearshift Ace is just one of our better pilots. 2-1 for 2 first strike. That when it cruises a vehicle, it gives it first strike. Veteran Motorist allows us to scry 2 when it ETBs. And, it also pumps a vehicle 1-1 whenever we crew it with it. And a 3-1 for 2 is certainly not bad either. The dwarf stats, from what I've noticed from the new sets, are all fairly decent when compared to their cost. They are very aggressively costed. I'm going to move the back up a little bit here, just so we can you can see all the new cards and bring it in efficiently. This is not a very professionally recorded video. I apologize for that. I'm just trying to show off a very fun deck. Partick Miner. This card is hilarious. If you know your opponent is hurting on mana, one of the funniest things to do is on their draw step, when you see that smile on their face, that they finally drew a land when they need one, is say, okay, on your main phase, Partick Miner, you can't play lands this turn. and they just get so upset. It's one of the funniest things. But in addition, if we know our opponents are just 1 mana off casting what they need to, on their turn we can just sack it and just say, no, sorry, you're not playing lands, and effectively time walk them in a lot of cases. Dwarven Blast Miner is a very strong card. It's non-basic land removal. Dwarves used to have kind of a land hate package theme going to them, and Dwarven Blast Miner represents that very well. We never morph it. It's just literally the same thing as the Dwarven Miner we run in the deck. It's just a second copy. This Dwarven Miner altar is done by a guy on eBay. I can't remember his name right now, but it's just a foil overlay put onto a real Dwarven Miner. So the card didn't come in foil, and I wanted to pick her up one. It's the exact same thing as the other card before. Just pay a 2 and a red and tap to destroy non-basic land. Metallic Mimic and Adaptive Automaton. Dwarves don't get a lot of Lord effects. As a matter of fact, they get Depala, and I'm pretty sure that's it. So using the 2 robotic Omni Lords is a must in this deck. The Automaton is just a straight up Lord. It'll become a Dwarf and pump all of the Dwarves 1/1. But the Mimic is something a little different. When it comes into play, you choose a type, and it becomes that creature in addition to its other types, or that type in addition to other types. But other than that, each other creature you control that enters the battlefield of the chosen type comes into play with an additional 1/1 counter on it. So it's a pump, but it's a more permanent pump for the ones that come into play afterwards. However, it will not affect the dwarves that were already in play when it came in. So arguably better, arguably worse than Adaptive Automaton, but the answer, if you had to choose between the two, my answer is why not both. Duragar Hedgemage is probably one of the best dwarves ever printed. Comes into play fairly often. We get to destroy an artifact or an enchantment, and every now and again we get to blow up both. So a 2/2 for 3 that blows up 1 to 2 things on enter the battlefield is a very powerful effect. Fairgrounds Warden is a Banisher Priest in dwarves. Yes, please. And Deadeye Harpooner is also removal on a dwarf. It's a little harder to get off, but there's still plenty of situations where after combat we swing, they block and kill something. We bring in Deadeye Harpooner and just blow up one of their tapped creatures. It's great for getting rid of combo pieces or pesky cards like Goblin Welder, so on and so forth. Dwarven Bloodboiler is a finisher card a lot of times. People forget about it. We just swing in with our vehicle and something on the ground, and they block the creature on the ground. Usually when I say a vehicle, I mean Sky Sovereign or something along those lines. But we swing in and they block, and then we tap all of our untapped dwarves to pump whatever wasn't blocked for a lot of damage. And that's finished more games than I can count. People seriously underestimate this guy, and he is a very powerful card. Definitely worth including. Next one is Mirror Entity. This card has actually won me a game recently against my fiance when I played this against her Dromoka deck, and she forgot that it also pumped. It didn't just pump the creatures, it made their base power known as XX by paying X. So I was able to pay X, crew some vehicles with it, and then pay the remainder of my mana to make everything bigger and swing in response to her not blocking. So, very powerful card, and it is a dwarf by the Changeling effect, so one of the stronger dwarves you can run. We have Master Trinketeer, aka Balin, from The Hobbit. He's basically a mana dump, 3/2 for 3, that it's pump servos and Thopters we control 1/1, not very relevant unless we happen to create some servo tokens. He's literally here just as a way to dump our mana into, and he also acts as a pretty decent pilot for most of the vehicles in the deck. Taurian Mauler is just a straight up aggressive swinger. When it casts a spell, it gets a 1/1 counter, and it's a 2/2 for 3 dwarf. Solemn Recruit is another awesome swinger. It can get bigger as long as things died from our battlefield at the end of turn, or something left the battlefield from our control at the end of turn. It gets a 1/1 counter, and it is already a 2/2 for 3 double strike, making it a solid swinger. Aerial Responders is one of our few sources of damage in the air. Vampire Whitehawk here is awesome. Renegade Wheelsmith, another excellent pilot. We crew a vehicle with it, and we make a creature unable to block this turn, and we swing in. Great against Voltron decks where they only have one creature in play, or they've only left a couple blockers up. Maybe they left one flyer up in the air to stop our Sky Sovereign. This guy can just shut it down pretty hardcore. Dwarven Recruit, or Dwarven Recruiter. This guy is excellent. For those of you who play Goblin Recruiter in Goblin Tribal, I know I do, in my Vial Smasher deck, then you know Dwarven Recruiter is excellent. Synergizes very well with Depala, because we go find any number that we want, put them on top, tap Depala, crew a vehicle, pay that amount, and we get all those dwarves into our hand. So we can find removal cards like Duergar, Hedgemage, and Fairgrounds Warden. It can find finishers like Dwarven Blood Boiler. There's just a lot that we can find with the Recruiter, and it helps out immensely. Duergar Mine Captain is one of my favorites because we can use it to crew most of the vehicles in the deck, and then we can untap it. So it can actually crew almost every vehicle by itself, provided we have the mana, leaving us with dwarves and vehicles to attack with. Mine Layer is one that is funny. Again, Gaia's Cradle, Cabal Coffer, Sarah's Sanctum, and other problem lands exist in the format. Maybe they're playing Academy Ruins. Well, it's kind of fun to put a counter on that Academy Ruins and then dare them to tap that land. Yeah, it's a premier removal target, but if they do happen to spend removal on this, then that saves one of our other cards, like our vehicles or Depala herself, from getting hit with that removal spell. And then Bomb Squad is just one that is funny. It creates a bit of a game. This is a casual deck, and I've actually had situations where the Bomb Squad killed a few things. So maybe kind of a joke card or a funny card to most, but it is actually an effective card in the long run. Camera's getting close to the 20-minute mark here, so I'm going to go ahead and stop and start again, and then we'll look at the vehicle package. Okay, so we're back. Now let's go ahead and have a look at the vehicles that our dwarves are going to be crewing and piloting in this deck. Smuggler's Copter is an obvious include. It's a loot effect on attack or block, 3/3 for 2 that crews for 1 with flying. This guy is probably in everyone else's Depala deck and needs to be there. Sky Skiff. This guy should not be here. This is actually supposed to be a Heart of Kirin, but I haven't been able to find one in foil, so yeah, I haven't put it in yet. But for now, 2/3 for 2 flyer. The crews for 1 is decent. Heart of Kirin is definitely a worthwhile replacement, and if you don't like Heart of Kirin in the deck because you just see it as another flying beater with no real synergy, understandable. Daredevil Dragster or one of the other vehicles I have not included would be a good replacement. Renegade Freighter is an amazing attacker. Great conversion rate, paying 2 power to crew into a 4/3. That when it attacks, it gets +1/+1 and gains trample. Makes it a 5/4 trample, and if we have Depala in play, it's a 6/5 trample that we're swinging with through just tapping a 1 power creature or 2 power creature. Hard to say no to the Renegade Freighter. Cultivator's Caravan is both mana ramp as well as a decent swinger. Mobile Garrison, I think, is very cool because when it attacks, we can untap another artifact or creature we control. So we can untap one of our attackers, we can untap a Gilded Lotus, or whatever the case may be. It's just kind of a fun combat trick card, and a 3/4 that crews for 2 is not bad. Peacewalker Colossus is easily, in my opinion, one of the best vehicles in this deck. 6/6 for 3 that converts for 4 is not bad, but it's the ability to pay 1 and a white to crew a vehicle this turn. So we don't even have to waste our dwarves. Again, if we have the mana, this can now do the Duergar Mine Captain effect, and it can just crew everything, leaving us with both vehicles and dwarves to swing with. And ironically, we can tap the Duergar Mine Captain if it happens to have enough pump to crew the Peacewalker Colossus, and then untap the Mine Captain to swing with it as well. So just kind of a funny little thing, but the Colossus is definitely a must include in Depala decks. Bomat Bazaar Barge is a 5/5 for 4 that converts on 3 power, and ETB's drawing as a card so it replaces itself. You know, again, card draw on our colors is nice. Replacement effects are nice. Decent conversion rate is decent. Oval Chase Dragster, this card is fun. 6/1 for 4, conversion rate is 1 power, trample haste. So with Depala in play, we're getting 7 power, trample, and haste for 4 mana and any creature we have that wants to crew it. Hard to say no. Untethered Express is another amazing hitter, 4/4 for 4, conversion rate of only 1, trample, and when it attacks, it gets a 1/1 counter. Gets big fast, does a lot of damage. Fleetwheel Cruiser is a trample haste 5/3 that crews itself on ETB, and later only has a conversion rate of 2 power. Sky Sovereign, again, it's one of those stable cards. If you're playing Depala, you're likely playing Sky Sovereign. ETBs, it bolts a creature or a planeswalker. 6/5 for 5, flyer with a conversion rate of 3 power. Definitely a must include. Aradara Express is a little basic, and again, it can be replaced with a lot of other vehicles if you prefer them. But the 8/6 for 5, conversion rate of 4, menace vehicle has certainly done quite a bit of work in my meta. Ballista Charger is probably the most unimpressive, and it is one that I'm heavily considering cutting for something like Daredevil Dragster or maybe one of the other Dwarfs. 6/6 for 5, converts for 3, attacks does 1 damage to a creature or player. Easily the worst vehicle in the deck, in my opinion, and that is if we're considering Sky Skiff to be a Heart of Kiran. Otherwise, Sky Skiff's obviously the worst, but Ballista Charger is a close second. I'm likely going to cut this for a different vehicle. Demolition Stomper, 10/7 for 6, conversion rate of 5, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power of 2 or less. Well, Alesha decks aren't stopping it unless they're blocking with Alesha. Combo decks generally aren't stopping it. It's hitting for a lot of damage. It's just a fun, big, dumb artifact. And come on, who doesn't love playing big, dumb artifacts? Sculpting Steel. This card usually becomes a copy of one of our vehicles, although it has become a copy of Gilded Lotus more than once. A staple in any artifact deck, in my opinion. Tempered Steel is going to give all of those vehicles, as well as some of your locker, Metallic Mimic, and Adaptive Automaton, +2/+2. Mostly in here just to make our vehicles much more deadly. Vandalblast, we're playing red, we're playing Vandalblast. Into the other removal spells, we have Path to Exile. Second best removal spell in white, in my opinion, at least for a single target. Swords of Plowshares, the best removal spell in white for a single target. And then Dispatch, which in this deck is honestly better than the other two. I have never once seen this cast or cast this myself where it didn't just exile a creature for 1 white mana. Beautiful card if you're playing Depala or Dorkadine or any other artifact-based white deck. Crypt Swap is fun because we can grab it with Dwarf and Recruiter, we can grab it off of Depala's ability because it is technically a Dwarf due to its Changeling ability. And at 3 mana and instant speed to exile the creature and replace it with a 1/1 Shapeshifter, it can seem kind of bad, but in all honesty, it's just got so much versatility with how we can grab it and what we can do with it, that it's a must include in the deck in my mind. Chaos Warp, once again, if we're playing a red deck, Chaos Warp has got to be in there somewhere. It can tuck any permanent on the battlefield, and yeah, I can give them something bigger, but that's just the risk we play when we play Chaos Warp. In addition, I've also cast this on my own permanents that were about to be exiled, that I didn't want exiled, and shuffled them away, saved them from the exile effect to get back later, and even gotten some pretty sweet cards off of the Chaos Warp. Day of Judgment. Board wipes are essential in the format. Sometimes things get out of control and we need to wipe the board. So, on that same note, we have Day of Judgment, Wrath of God, and then Hostilities, which I know this card isn't played as much as other board wipes. I honestly feel like it's an underplayed card. We only have 2 equipment in the entire deck. And if you're not playing a very heavy equipment deck, then End Hostilities can be beautiful. If your opponent isn't playing a Voltron deck or a deck with a lot of a lot of equipment, then it's usually just a 5 mana Day of Judgment. But what if they have Lightning Greaves or Swiftfoot Boots or Champions Hum attached to a creature, which they most certainly will, or some of the Swords of Protection and Value, then End Hostilities gets rid of those as well, and all we pay for the additional removal is 1 additional generic mana. Love this card. I'm going to put it into every white deck I ever build that is not centered around equipment. Because if you're blowing up the board, auras are already getting blown away anyways, with the exception of Totem Armor. And this is also a great answer to Totem Armor. We also have Blasphemous Act, because once again we're playing red, and wiping the board for 1 red mana is kind of funny. Our tutor package is very small. We have the Dwarven Recruiter, but we also have both Gamble and Enlightened Tutor. And that's because we're playing Boros, and Boros just doesn't tutor very well. So grabbing anything off the Gamble and hoping to keep it is fairly strong, and then Enlightened Tutor goes and grabs us any of our vehicles or other artifacts we need. So, definitely worth including in the deck. Wheel of Fortune. We're playing Boros. We need to be able to reload our hand, and Wheel of Fortune's the best way to do it. Duretti, he's decent card draw. And from his +2 ability, he can sack an artifact to bring back an artifact with his -2. And if we happen to get his emblem off, which my fiance has done so, I believe, once or twice, then it's really fun to just accrue our vehicles and swing all in, and then if they die, we bring them back at the end of turn, and they're all untapped, and, if we have a couple other creatures to crew them with, we can just not care about it. But he's mostly in here for his first 2 abilities. Madcap Experiment is in here because it's fun. That is it. It is a fun card. It is a decent card as well. It has done quite a bit of work. But it is fun. Yes, it can damage us. Yes, it can kill us, but I don't care. The card is just so much fun to play. People often forget when it comes to Commander that you can play the format very casually and just have a blast doing so. And this is not a competitive deck by any means, so, you know, kick loose, have a little fun, take a risk, maybe make a couple experiments. Of course, we're playing Lightning Greaves because giving Depala Shroud and Haste is powerful. Konda's Banner. There are 23 Dwarves in the deck, I believe, outside of Depala. Maybe, I think it's 23. So, giving them all +2/+2, it has certainly nothing to scoff at. It helps them crew vehicles more easily, and it makes them more efficient swingers. So, Konda's Banner, I've been liking it in this deck a lot, actually, but you can replace it for Swiftfoot Butcher or Champion's Helm if you want. Start your engines. We have a lot of vehicles in the deck, and having a vehicle overrun that crews them all is a great closeout, and this has ended the game several times before. Definitely a fun card to win with. And last but not least, we have the Boros staple in the format, and that is Boros Charm. It can deal 4 damage to a player's face, which we almost never do in Commander. It can make all of our permanents indestructible this turn, which we almost always do in Commander, in response to either ours or our opponent's board wipe. Or we can give a creature double strike until end of turn, which can win us the game. So, Boros Charm, definitely a staple in the format, definitely a must include. So that is my fiance's Casual Depala Pilot Exemplar Dwarf / Vehicle Tribal deck. What did you guys think? Is there anything you'd like to add to it? Is there anything that you guys think is awesome about the deck or is lacking about the deck? Keep in mind, it's a casual deck. It's meant to have a theme to it. My fiance is a huge fan of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So, specifically, she loves the Dwarven Company from the Hobbit series. So, having a dwarf deck meant a lot to her. It was her very first Magic deck ever, and she's fallen in love with the game because of this deck. So, on a side note, if you have a loved one that you want to get into the game, or a friend, or, you know, whatever the case may be, and you want to get them into playing the game, find out what they like and try and replicate it in the game with Commander. Play against them with other casual Commander decks and let them have a good time. I play against this Depala deck with my Vial Smasher Goblins deck all the time. And, you know, we just sit there and we have a good Tolkien war between the Goblins and the Dwarves and yada, yada, yada. So don't be afraid to sit back and relax and just have a nice casual game every now and again. For those of you who want to see more competitive decks, don't worry. Once my friend Hagen finishes his Marin deck, we are going to show off his particular Marin list, a very competitive, grindy attrition deck. Plan to show that off sometime soon. I will likely do a Vial Smasher deck tech before too long. It's right between casual and competitive. There are some infinite combos in the deck, but when I'm playing against decks like this, I just use them as aggressive Goblin Tribal decks. I'm building a Melik casual deck to show off in the future. And there's plenty of other decks in the area that I can happily show off to you guys and get your opinion. I'm building Brago, I'm building Yasan, I'm building Kemba. So expect more deck techs in the future. Probably the next one you can expect to see is a Jaya Ballard deck tech, which is in this beautiful pink deck box, which is a mono-red control, very oppressive build. So let me know what you guys want to see next, and let me know what you guys thought of the video. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time, I'll see y'all later. Signing out, and have a good day.